since Khalid, we wanted Khalid Latif to talk first, and he hasn't come as yet on.
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, Khalid, great.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum.
Excellent. We were,
All right, how's it
alhamdulillah.
going?
Good, man. Good to see you, Khalid, all the way from New York City.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Sorry, I was just a little quiet, but I've been on for a little bit.
Oh, I didn't catch it. So I will go ahead with Imam Khalid Latif first, then yourself, Dr. Dilkhush Panjwani.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum, shanti, shalom, and peace be each and every one of you, wherever you are listening and tuning in to our weekly webinar, Your Story, A Mercy to Humanity, hosted by the Muslim Food Bank and yours truly, Habeeb Ali. We are very, very fortunate and privileged, blessed throughout the COVID. We have been able to engage and interview and share the amazing and inspiring stories of personalities around the world. And today we are honored after chasing down Dr. Dilkhush Panjwani, who has a busy schedule and has a flight to catch and a birthday to celebrate and children to see and patients to look after. He has agreed to be on our interview today. But more importantly, before we go to Dr. Dilkhush Panjwani, a dear colleague and friend, Khalid Latif, a personality of the United States of America, one who stood up for Black Lives Matter, who stood up against domestic violence, stood up against racism and white supremacy in the States. And of course, he has been our guest in Canada many times, helping and fundraising and speaking to some of the social issues that we faced in Canada, including mental health. Dr. Dilkhush, you'll be happy to know that at the Nasia Gala, Khalid Latif was our guest speaker a few years ago, where I first met him, and he's a chaplain at the University of New York. Today, I want to engage with him for a few minutes that we have with him on domestic violence. But first and foremost, I want to ask Khalid, how has he been during COVID, and how is New York City?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about some of the things we're going to get into. New York right now is doing a lot better than what it was. I've been here and haven't left since a lot of the social distancing got into play. April and May were really, really tough. It was hard on a lot of people. We had more than 30,000 people pass away in New York City at that time. And you now see a lot of the residual impact from jobs lost, healthcare lost, people not being able to pay their rent. So there's still a lot more to do. But if you walked in the streets of New York today, in comparison to what it was like in April, it's like a totally different place. People are observing social distancing as best as they can. They have their masks on, but restaurants are open. There's a lot more people on the streets, and it seems like people are returning back to some level of normalcy.
That's incredible. Normalcy is not one of those words that we are taking very keenly these days, right? Some people call it the new normal. And we wish that wouldn't be so. Tell me a bit about what's been happening in France this week. Is that having an impact upon your well-being there in New York?
There's definitely a lot of people who are speaking to it and to understand the unfortunate reality. I mean, we are not unaccustomed to violence against Muslims, Islamophobia against Muslims, anti-Muslim sentiment taking place. But having had 4 years of Donald Trump in the presidency and now leading into a presidential election, I think people's minds are very much more focused on what's going to be happening next week here and what that's going to mean in the aftermath. It's really interesting. Most people that you talk to right now, they're not excited necessarily about any outcome. There's many who just want Trump to be out, but they're not particularly jumping up and down at the idea of a Biden-Harris ticket. They just know that in either situation, regardless of who wins, there's a need to brace ourselves for a lot of ensuing issues that'll come after the election that potentially, God forbid, could result in a lot of hate crimes, increase in bias incidents, and many other things.
And of course, we welcome you to Canada in an incident where you have to leave New York City.
I might come. My wife doesn't like the cold up there. Otherwise, we'd be there in a minute, man.
But yes, our prayers and thoughts with you. And I know it's a big week coming up, and Canadians, just like rest of the world, are attuned to what's happening. And I love your post after the presidential debate. You actually posted on Facebook. You shared your mind, as I would say. Um, do you see things on the very issue that we want to speak about today, on domestic violence? Do you see Islamophobia having an impact, or there's a correlation on domestic violence?
Well, you know, many of the perpetrators of this kind of violence also are perpetrators who engage in acts of supremacy. And when someone asks me what I feel about anti-Muslim sentiment, aside from the fact that it's abhorrent, to me, it's just very symptomatic of a deeply entrenched anti-Blackness that the United States has built upon systemically and structurally. And when you look at acts of domestic terrorism that take place from usually white males who are walking into schools, walking into other public places, and shooting people. There's a relation quite often to those individuals and issues of abuse and domestic violence, and we see the challenges that stem from a lack of control and authority. The doctor could probably speak more to it than I could, but in general, there's not really any community that is devoid of this atrocity that is intimate partner violence, gender-based violence, domestic violence, whatever terminology we want to call it by. Statistically, 1 out of every 3 women will experience abuse. Either they have already or they will at some point in their lives. And deepening the understanding that that's not just physical violence, which in and of itself is a form, but we're talking about financial abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse. Within the prism of religion, you can have spiritual abuse. We have sexual abuse, various forms of abuse that take place that are all centered around this idea of control and authority that is impacting so many people from all walks of life.
Incredible. So there is a correlation of anti-blackness to violence against women. I was just watching this incredible Helen Reddy, who fought as an Australian singer in the States to actually come and to get the opportunity to actually sing and get recorded. And that was years ago. And of course, we know the rest is history. Her songs became part of the women's rights anthem, Helen Reddy. And then today in the news, we saw something about assault by a Raptors player. So the point I'm making here is that with domestic violence being focused on the Muslim community, do you think the wider community already affected usually by the domestic violence? Is it doubly amount in the Muslim community, or is the same level like the mainstream community?
No, I mean, I don't think you can quantify it in that way. Definitely, there's domestic violence that exists in the Muslim community, but there's a big misconception that people have that this is something that impacts minorities. This is something that impacts people who are immigrants, people who might not have gone past a certain level of education or have no education at all. But the reality is that you find this kind of abuse in communities of all walks of life, inclusive of people who are upper class, wealthy, affluent, people who make up the majority, people who are privileged. We've started through our Islamic Center at New York University, some of our community members, a domestic violence service that we call Pillars of Peace, that just a couple of weeks ago closed on a building as its first project that we're calling the Noura House, which is going to be an emergency confidential shelter for women and children who are survivors of abuse. But the shelter in and of itself, although it's run by people who practice Islam as a faith and informed by our values, is going to be open to anybody. And we're building relationships and have been over the last couple of years with various city agencies, other shelters and similar spaces that cater to particular individuals of certain backgrounds, whether that's ethnically, racially, culturally, so that we can really be open to people from all walks of life, knowing that people from all walks of life are impacted by this.
Well, I love the fact that you say it's across ethnic focus and Muslim community, and it's open to people of all backgrounds. I have on the Zoom today Chaplain Julian Martin, and she works as a chaplain like myself in the halfway house downtown. And you wouldn't believe it. Just like a minute ago, we were talking about helping with folks who are you've seen in the news today on the tent city, right? Homeless folks in tent city in downtown Toronto. How we get care packages to them. So for sure, I love the idea, and I'm hoping we are connected to Facebook Live and YouTube, and those who are listening, that they will think about it in their hearts to really support the Pillars of Peace, the first of its kind Muslim-based or Muslim-founded shelter for women in the United States of America. Something that we would definitely have a need for in Canada as well. Dr. Dilkhush, I know we have a different program with you, but before Khalid Latif leaves us, I would like your sentiments on this topic of domestic violence and the Muslim community.
Well, due to the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic worldwide, there have been a few studies which show that there is an increase in domestic violence. The incidence has increased. And there are many factors. There are psychological factors, which is stress due to social isolation and lack of support. There's a social factor, unemployment, financial, economical problems, and spiritual problems as well, where the people do not have any higher power to fall back on, those who don't disbelieve in the creator. So stress is a common denominator for violence. Now, domestic violence has been there in the society. And if I may add, there's violence against children and violence against the seniors as well, elder abuse. So this incidence is going up. Now, there has to be resources available on how to deal with these societal problems. In my belief, any relationship, whether it's a marriage or with children or with your employers or your neighbors, if you can imagine a three-legged stool, the stool can only stand if all three legs are intact. So relationship is based on a three-legged stool. One of the leg is respect, the other is trust, and the third one is love. Now you can translate it narrowly in family relationship. If there is no respect or if there is no trust, there is no love. So all three have to be present to have a functional, a proper, productive, and fulfilling relationship.
So you're talking the triangle of love, the three angles of love, actually: commitment, intimacy, and affection.
Sure.
Good. So we come back to Khalid Latif. Before you go, my dear Imam and beloved friend, you have taken a very mountainous and gigantic task of establishing such a center in America. Tell us what we could do to help. And number two, if you have come across any form of misconception that Islam condones wife beating and domestic violence, could you also address that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best things people can do to be supportive is, one, to get educated and aware. If you are not experiencing domestic violence yourself, there's a good chance you know of somebody who is. And it's not one of those things, as you know, the doctor could mention, that if you don't have training of some kind, you don't want to add to it by utilizing just through your own socialization terminologies you might be unfamiliar with, or giving advice that is still going to impact how somebody lives. You can go to many different venues, centers to take bystander type trainings, intervention trainings, trainings that can give you insight on what it actually is like to be somebody who is going through an abusive situation of some kind, and then try to see where and how you can build locally coalitions or collaborations to institutionalize services. Because an individual who is going through a problem needs our support, but they likely are just exemplifying thousands more who are going through it, and their voices are not being heard. Their stories are not being shared. If you're a Muslim and you're listening to this, it becomes communal obligation, what we call fard kifaya, to build these types of institutions to meet the needs of those who are underserved and underprivileged, and to ensure that we're doing what we can to build holistic modes of engagement through interdisciplinary groups that are creating these things. So if you are somebody who understands bookkeeping, you have a role in this. If you are the mental health specialist, you have a role in this. If you are the graphic designer, the person who understands law, the fundraiser, you are the religious scholar, you are the social worker. Each person plays a role in this, because it's not any one discipline or profession that's going to be able to build something institutionally on their own. We're going to need to lean on each other and everyone's skills and everyone's talents to build what we can't expect anyone else to build for ourselves. If you want to support our project, you can find more information on it at pillarsofpeace.org. And we have a crowdfunding up right now that's launchgood.com/pillars of peace. That all of the funds raised are going to go to help support survivors of abuse. And so whatever you can give, inshallah, would be appreciated. And if you can help spread the word on that, that would be appreciated as well.
Thank you so much. Pillarsofpeace.org. I've shared that. And again, Julianne says education is the key. And Julianne, again, we thank you for joining us. And this is, ladies and gentlemen, we are very honored to have with us Chaplain Khalid Latif from University, was it New York University? NYU, is it?
NYU, yeah.
NYU. So that's Dr. Dilkhush is from UFT. So he might be thinking, my God, I'm giving an edge to NYU here.
Oh, man. We won't tell anybody. Don't worry.
It's just amazing. I'm blessed to have you, and I hope you could have you again to further some of these key conversations, and especially post-election, that you'll be very, very busy discussing the pros and cons of what it means to American Muslims. We are going through our own situation in Canada. I just want to take this opportunity to say tomorrow many Muslims in the world are observing Yom Milad an-Nabi and Yom an-Nabi, and the birth anniversary of the Holy Prophet, in whom be peace. And your presentation today just summarizes the fact that the Holy Prophet was rahmatul alameen and mercy to humanity. So what you're doing here today is a great, great tribute towards his personality and his character. And I wish you all the best, my dear brother. And may Allah bless you and everyone else that's on the project.
Well, thank you for having me. And definitely we'll continue the conversation at a later time. I apologize that I'm going to be stepping out earlier, but let's definitely keep in touch, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much.
Before you leave, Imam.
Yes, sir.
Here in Canada, we have compulsory, mandatory anger management courses for those who have been charged with family violence. And we also have many other organizations that protect the women from, in fact, there was a project where they had a lipstick case in which you could roll a long strip of paper with all the women's shelters and all the resources that were available. So even if the violent spouse dug into her purse, it would look like a lipstick, but inside, and it was very handy for women. A similar project should be also something that you could think of in your...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. Thank you for the idea. I'll definitely look it up and we'll see. But I apologize. I'm going to miss your part of the conversation, Doctor. But thank you for doing the work that you're doing. We'll definitely be in touch, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
I've met you before at the conference.
Yeah, you look very familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, yalla. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalam.
Wa alaikum salam.
Ladies and gentlemen, we thank we thank Imam Khalid Latif for joining us. And assalamu alaikum, shalom, shanti, and peace be each and every one of you. We welcome Dr. Dilkhush Panjwani, our psychiatrist, our Muslim pioneer in Canada. I will be asking him some of the questions. Hopefully, we can have a landscape of his life. Of course, that will take a whole year of discussion, but I'm very privileged to know him. We recently celebrated his Order of Ontario when he received that award. And it is just, again, congratulations to you, Dr. Dilkhush
Thank you.
Panjwani, for honoring the Muslim community with receiving that honorable award. Very few of our members have been able to receive such a distinguished award of the Order of Ontario, and I hope that will raise the standard of our own humanitarian and professionals in the community, that they will also do better. I want to begin by asking you, if you could share with us something in your childhood that you grew up with, was that you experienced, or someone in your life in those tender years that may have helped to form some of your values that you're carrying on with you today. And just share with us, what was your childhood like?
Well, Imam, thank you for the introduction. That was very generous of you. Alhamdulillah, the award or any award is what we don't work towards. That's not our goal. Our goal is service to the community. And I'm humbled by the award, and I dedicate it to all my patients, to every individual person who is suffering from mental disorder, because we learn from them. Now, thank you also for giving me this opportunity. I don't find many occasions to actually dress up formally, and I jump at any opportunity like that to wear my suit. Uh, uh, it's a mark of respect for all my listeners, but also it makes me feel good. When you dress, you feel good. So, what I have lived through 70 years or 7 decades, 2 centuries, and 2 millenniums.
Wow.
So would the millennium, 1900s and 2000, 2 centuries, gone through a lot. Thank God I haven't lived through the world wars. And I just hope and pray that we never have to go through any world war. But actually speaking, the COVID pandemic is like the Third World War. It has involved each and every nation. Nobody has been spared. And every nation is trying to struggle to fight one common enemy, which is the virus, the coronavirus. So let me start from the beginning. As you say, in Alice in Wonderland, where should I begin?
Yeah, your childhood. I want to hear something that.
The queen says, begin from the beginning. All right. I was born in Bombay. I have a brother, younger brother, who probably is online too, listening to our conversation, Dilkhush Panjwani. My parents and we lived in very humble surroundings. Actually, my office is bigger than what my home was, a rented apartment. My father was a Gandhian by philosophy. He believed in simple living and high thinking. Even though he had only primary education in school, he had moved from Gujarat to Bombay, and he is a self-made man, totally. And I could see a lot of virtues which I would find when I read the books on hadith, on our Prophet's character, and how Prophet, peace be upon him, preached humility and generosity and forgiveness. My mother was also unlettered. She couldn't read or write, but she believed very strongly in education. And both my brother and I are very grateful to my mother and my father, uh, who lived hand to mouth but supported us throughout our education, our university education, and our medical education. I am a psychiatrist by training after I did my fundamental basic training in medicine. My brother did the same, but he is now a radiation oncologist working in Regina and also has his base in New Brunswick. Uh, so we are just two brothers, no sister.
Wow.
But
Bye-bye.
and as they say, God is merciful. Allah is very merciful. Even though I had no sisters, He blessed us with 4 daughters.
4 daughters.
Me with
Congratulations.
4 daughters. Now, they say that behind every man, there's a great woman. In my life, there has been 6 women. My mother, my wife, and my 4 daughters. And now the tradition has continued with 3 of my granddaughters and 2 grandsons. So women dominate my life. And thank God for that. Alhamdulillah, I'm blessed.
Alhamdulillah. Incredible.
Because I believe that this century, 21st century, is the century of the women, where equality, equity in job situation, respect, everything is. I'm just waiting for the day when America has a woman president too.
Sure.
Maybe very soon. But I just
So let's
wanted
go back
to.
to your childhood. You're saying that your
Yes,
father influenced you with a Gandhian philosophy of simplicity,
right.
right thinking, and your mother influenced you with education.
We
So
had
what?
a very
So
we
what
had
was
a
your
very simple
education?
life.
What was your educational path like?
Well, we had a very simple life. Both my brother and I went to St. Michael's High School in Mahim. It's a famous school because it has this novena, uh, which is attended on every Wednesday by millions, whether they are Christians or Catholics or other faiths.
Yes.
Novena had its own uh, charm and religious importance in our school. Uh, we lived a very simple life. We did not have any social media, no cell phones, no television, no telephones, no car. So, how did we spend our time? Besides school studies, our mother would make sure that we did all our homework, and then we would find ways of playing some games. Marbles marbles and the spin top were very popular. But in the house, we had a carom board. You must be very familiar with carom
Yes.
boards.
Karen board, yeah.
And also we had made our own chessboard. A chessboard where we drew the squares, colored them, and then used different types of buttons, shirt buttons and trouser buttons, as different pieces of chess. And my brother and I used to play chess, so much so that my brother passed on the chess education to his son, Raja. And today, Raja is on the verge of becoming a grandmaster, the grandmaster of Canada very soon.
Wow.
Inshallah. So
Congratulations.
that was a simple lifestyle. Um, we took pride in uh, focusing in the education. That way, my mother was very strict when it came to discipline. Uh, my father also was disciplinarian, but he was not that tough on us. So once we grew up, we both went to college. It was a very good experience. I was in one of the best colleges, Elphinstone College in Bombay. Did my graduation, joined Armed Forces Medical College for my medical education, which again contributed a lot in my uh, way of thinking, in my discipline, time management. And it was a very big family there. All students were living in the hostel, and AFMC, as we called it, Armed Forces Medical School in Pune, gave me the best medical education. Then I did my post graduation at the St. GS Medical College and KEM Hospital in Bombay, which is a pioneer institute in all branches of medicine, a teaching hospital. Did my diploma and my doctorate in psychological medicine. Serendipity has been part of my life. It's just by chance, a good luck, I came to England. And serendipity is that my professor.
So this is leading us to your migration story.
Yeah, the hijrah.
The hijrah.
I was not oppressed in India, but the hijrah nevertheless. And hijrah is a very, very important historical date for humanity, because that showed how immigration process can help people and what are the challenges faced by immigrants. So my professor's patient was a British subject and had a breakdown. So I had to accompany him because professor was too busy in his practice, Professor Dungaji. So I accompanied the patient to London, Heathrow. I stayed there for 14 days. I was offered a job in Epsom. That was the time when the Shergar had won the Epsom Derby. His Highness the Aga Khan's race horse Shergar.
Shergar.
It was the most popular derby event. Anyway, having spent 5 years in some of the best institutions in England, University of Bristol, University of Cardiff, and University of London, the Maudsley Hospital, which is known as the Mecca of psychiatry, I learned a lot about mental health from professors who had written original books, not just editors or chapter writers. They wrote whole books, and it was such a learning experience. Then again, my brother was in Kuwait at the time, and when he was visiting me in London, one of his friends had come to see him, and he was coming to Canada on a special underserviced area program. So I happened to request him to take my resume to Canada too. Overnight, I typed my resume and gave it to him at the airport. It just happened that I came in December of 1985, found my job in one of the underserviced area in Timmins, Northern Ontario. Timmins is a city with a heart of gold.
You're a pioneer Muslim of Timmins.
Yes, there were 3 Muslim families. There were absolutely 30 South Asian families, of which there were 3 Muslim families, and ours was the 4th. So it was a very close-knit community. And before I left Timmins, I was the president of the Multicultural Association in Timmins. Timmins was fun because our children had the opportunity of growing up in a nice, safe place. of course, there are only a few famous people, and if you can guess, Shania Twain is from Timmins.
Yes.
And Thumping Tom is from Timmins. So anything that happened in Timmins was like a big, big event. A science fair in Timmins was considered like, the city didn't have many important events. So 7 years in Timmins. At some time in there, I was the only psychiatrist. So most of the town people, most of the city people of 50,000, I was quite known to everyone there. I could even hold a plane if I was late for the airport. Timmins had a lot of good things, good memories for me. And then I came down and settled in Toronto. I came and joined the Queensway Hospital in Etobicoke. Queensway Hospital subsequently merged with two other hospitals, the Mississauga and the Credit Valley Hospital. And for the last 26 years, I have been at Queensway Hospital as a consultant psychiatrist. So that's the story of my life. And I am a community psychiatrist, basically. Although I have interest in some areas of research, basically my work is for the community. I have been blessed by knowing so many institutions, faith institutions, social institutions. People don't consider me just as a Muslim, they consider me as one of them. I can walk into a mandir at BAPS Swaminarayan Mandir and they respect me. I walk into a Gurdwara. Why? Not because I am somebody very great, because I have managed to build relationships, build bridges of friendship selflessly. So, as you know, Allah judges everyone by their intention. Niyat.
Yes.
If you have a good intention, you are able to make friends, develop and nurture the trust.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want us to, if you allow us to enter into a space where, despite of such a successful career, successful family, and social and communal pathway, there must have been times where you faced hurdles and challenges. And what are some of the things you have done to overcome those hurdles and challenges? I wish you can share this with us, because we have people who are listening here today. They may be going through their own challenges during COVID-19. They may be going through their own challenges with unemployment or relationships, loss of family, or whatever it is right now. And they could be inspired from your story.
Well, there have been challenges all the way. We had financial challenges. I had challenges in getting a seat for my MD. Every week was a challenge applying for a job in UK. As a house officer, as a registrar, as a senior registrar, and there were challenges right from day one in school. To get over some of the bullying issues, I wasn't bullied personally, but I sensed that to avoid getting bullied, I had to get into some leadership role. So I became a prefect, a monitor first, class monitor, and then a prefect. When I went into medical school, it was a challenge. I was short of a couple of marks to get into any of the medical schools in Bombay. It was a challenge how to get into a medical school, which is Armed Forces Medical College, that has 20,000 applicants and 120 seats only. That was a big challenge. So, if you speak of challenges, we all face challenges. We have good challenges, we have unfortunate challenges. Financially, till I came to Canada, I was always doing locums here and there in England to make enough money to travel back home. Two of my daughters were born there, and two were born in Canada, in Timmins. So there are challenges. Although there are subtle challenges like discrimination and all, it didn't bother me. To break the glass ceiling, I believe that one has to be at least 5 times better than a white Canadian, a Caucasian, because of the religious background, the racial background, and even the country background. So challenges are many, many, many. Every day we all face challenges. We all face obstacles. Resilience is the key word. If we are resilient and bounce back from anything that is upsetting us, bouncing back is resilience. Plus a strong faith in God. If God is on your side, the whole world can be against you. You will win. A third is a deep sense of service, volunteerism. If you volunteer, there are people who will reciprocate in helping you. I volunteer for so many community organizations, and that's how people reciprocate to me, although I didn't have to ask any money or any other major favors from friends or from people I know. They are always willing to help. So the key word here is selfless service. No expectation, zero expectation. If you expect somebody to even say a word of thanks, then the challenge becomes more difficult. But if it is a selfless service, with a good intention, I don't think anybody will fail.
I love that, Dr. Dilkhush Panjwani. Ladies and gentlemen, if you just tuned in, we are listening to Dr. Dilkhush Panjwani, a celebrated psychiatrist here in the city of Toronto, and he's sharing with us his life journey. And today we want to talk about a bit about mental health. The recent survey or statistics I read is like almost 45% of Canadians who were surveyed recently have been affected mentally by COVID-19. Lots of anxiety and depression, and we're getting into the winter blues. So
Yes.
What's your advice for tackling this mental health issue that we may be faced with or we are facing currently?
Okay. Before I answer that question, hold that thought. I had close encounters of a spiritual kind with some of the top spiritual leaders in the world. Just to name a few, His Highness the Aga Khan, His Holiness Pope Francis, and this is close encounters. I'm not talking about just waving, talking to them. His Divine Holiness Pramukh Swami Maharaj, who is the spiritual guru of the entire BAPS Hindu organization, Swaminarayan organization. His Holiness Mahant Swami Maharaj, again from BAPS, and His Holiness Dalai Lama. So these spiritual leaders, they, amongst all their preaching, there were 2 or 3 words that were very important: hope, love, forgiveness, mercy, compassion. Okay, and charity. not to forget charity. So to come back to your question, this whole pandemic has created a sense of uncertainty of the future, a sense of fear in the minds and hearts of people, fear of confronting death, fear of and social isolation, total isolation, cut off, although you can communicate on the phone and virtually. Education has suffered because of school closures. So, how do you deal with this? As I said again, make yourself resilient. Substitute hope where there is fear. If hopes were dupes, fears may be liars. There's one of the poet who said that. So, daily physical exercise, a good sleep, proper nutrition, vitamins, especially vitamin D and C, meditation, prayers, and strong community connection would help. In fact, Imam Habeeb, I would just ask your audience to read two of my articles that were published in an international newspaper that was connected with United Nations, Japan, and Germany. Just key in two words. First word is Panjwani, Panjwani, and the second word Dickens, Dickens. When you type these two words in the search column of the Google, you will come across two articles. First article, What the Dickens? Let's Fight the Stress of Coronavirus, explains from A to Z what you can do to combat this. So we don't have much time to go into all those details. And the second paper is everything you wanted to know about coronavirus, but were afraid to ask. The title is Close Encounters of the COVID Kind. So my third article about to be published is Hope versus Fear. So we all are in this boat together.
And that was Jack Layton's motto before he passed away.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are all into this together. We have to support each other. We have to overcome racial, language, religious, and all these hatred, all these boundaries which bind us, discrimination. So hate, bigotry, racism are, there's three axes of evil now. The first one is COVID-19. The second one is economy. And third one is racial disharmony.
Yes.
And you can add the fourth one as environmental, which is not an axis of evil. But these three axes of evil, I call it, we have to deal with this as a humanity, as one world, as a cosmopolitan.
You were talking earlier about white privilege and what you may have worked 5 times harder. And we shouldn't have to work 5 times harder.
No.
But that is the advice that immigrants have received when coming to Canada or have after arriving in Canada. And we have imparted the same advice to our children.
No.
But we are seeing that we have cases of people very well qualified who have worked 5 times harder, but in their workplace, in the university setting, in the political setting, they're still faced with racism.
I know. Racism is alive. It has outlived its obituaries. Just like stigma has outlived its obituaries, stigma of mental health. We have stigma of race. We have stigma of COVID also. So they have all outlived their obituaries. We have to keep focused on our work, eventually people recognize your work. That's my experience. Um, and racism is one word which should not be loosely used. I mean, I had a friend who failed his driving test, and he says the driving instructor was racist. So I asked him, how do you say that? He said he asked me to do parallel parking, and I parked exactly parallel to the other car, and he failed me. I said, well, that's not racism. That's ignorance. So racism should not be used loosely because it loses its impact. That word loses its impact. We have to, of course, there is racism. Nobody can say. And that's why uh, one of my mentors and model hero is Jean Augustine.
Yes, Jean Augustine, of course, the Honorable Jean Augustine.
Jean Augustine is a black Grenadian person who came to Canada as an immigrant, and she's a woman. So she had three disadvantages. Jean achieved so much despite racism. So why can't we also look at her life and to make this as a message? I'm making a documentary on Jean Augustine's life and times.
Beautiful. As a matter of fact, Jean Augustine became the commissioner for the Fairness Commission. So what an irony, a person who went through so much and then rose to the top position in the country.
And it's not just Jean Augustine alone. There have been many, and there have been a few, like Mr. Faki, Muhammad Faki.
Yes.
He came from Lebanon, started a business, he's at the top. So these people have, it's like an elephant walking along and some dog is barking. The elephant doesn't go and respond to the dog. He keeps walking graciously. People may make racial comments. People might try to pull you down. That's part of human nature. Don't be discouraged. Keep pushing, keep pushing.
Okay, so Dr. Dilkhush Panjwani, we want to come back to the people who influence you in your life and nurtured you, and they have been your influencers. Was the Aga Khan one of them? Was your mother another one?
Besides His Highness the Aga Khan, who has done tremendous humanitarian philanthropic work across the world, especially in the developing countries of Asia, South Asia, and Central Asia. His focus has been on health, education, economy, and many other areas, art, Aga Khan Award for Architecture. So it's good to read some of his speeches because the speeches are written in a tone that is understood by the Western world.
I've seen that at the last Parliament presentation he had.
Yes, when he was offered when he was awarded the honorary citizenship of Canada. Besides His Highness the Aga Khan, I have many other role models which I look for. One of them is Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi, especially when he had written such a wonderful tribute to our Prophet, peace be upon him, describing the Prophet. Nelson Mandela, we talk about social isolation. Oh, I have to stay at home. We have television, we have internet, we have everything at our disposal. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in a confined space of prison. Can you imagine? That is called resilience. That is called faith, and that's called hope.
Locked behind bars. Yeah.
Mother Teresa, she was exemplary of how compassion towards the needy, towards the poor. So all these people have inspired me. Um, Sigmund Freud, of course, has inspired me too. uh,
Once you didn't get a Freudian slip.
yeah. Right. Sorry, was that a question?
No, I said once you didn't get a Freudian slip.
No. Well, when I talk about Freud, you see, in Islam, in the Quran and the Hadith, these are the two books which have to be your guide. Now, let me tell you my personal experience, a game changer, you can call it. In 2016, I was invited by Allah to his house, holy house in Mecca. I went to Kaaba Sharif in 2016. The day of Arafat, the most important day of Hajj, was the day of my birthday, September the 10th. If you check, in 2016. So I used to tell my Haji group of friends, they were very supportive, that look, I'm now a born again Muslim. So that was a game changer. So,
well, happy belated birthday.
People think that, Hajj is just a ritual. It's not. If you go with the right intention and ask for mercy and forgiveness and come back and change your life accordingly, Allah is always there to support you. So, as I was saying, whatever we can learn is from these two books. Now, coming to mental health and Sigmund Freud, we talk about the word nafs in Quran, and it's been mentioned so many times. What is nafs? Freud took that idea and translated it into id, id. According to the Freudian theory, the id, the ego, and the superego. So nafs is also something which is a collective consciousness. And Jung talked about collective consciousness. So you see, some of the ideas which are there in our Quran is a complete and perfect book. A lot of scientific ideas, from embryology to astronomy to geography to oceanography, you name it, physics, chemistry, is all there present. I would urge all my listeners, whether you're of the same faith, or you're either a sister or a brother in faith or in humanity, it's worth reading the life of our Holy Prophet and the Quran.
So what do you say to Macron right now, the French president that is making such terrible allegations and
well, I know,
instigating such violence now in the city in the name of the Prophet Muhammad?
What ignorance. It's a clash of ignorance. A knowledgeable person, a literate person, an educated and a wise man will not insult any religion or any person or any faith or any color or caste. It's the ignorant people. And there's always a political agenda. In my opinion, religion has been used as a disguise or a mask. Nowadays, we talk about mask. So religion is used as a mask by criminals, by business people to make money, and by politicians to divide and rule. So this is basically a strategy of divide and rule. It's happening in many countries.
Unfortunately, it's taking a toll of lives as well. And
yes,
the Prophet Muhammad himself did not respond to those who insulted him with violence.
Never.
But this is the opposite. It's true. What's happening today? I'll ask our our guests who are listening and join us on Zoom to unmute themselves if they would like to give a comment or ask a question to Dr. Dilkhush now. I will begin with Julian, and then anyone else. Unmute yourself and share a comment or ask a question, or just say thank you.
Hi.
Hi there. I just wanted to thank you for sharing a little bit of your story. I'm sure that we just got a little snippet of it. I especially like the idea of you and your brother playing chess, a homemade chessboard, and now your nephew being a grandmaster. That's incredible. Really speaks to the power of laying a foundation for our children, and how, we don't have to have a lot to show them the things that matter, right? So I'm sure that the time that you and your brother spent together, that's priceless. So it's
Thank you.
better than having Xbox and PlayStation and all that other stuff. So
Video game.
thank you so much for sharing tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, I think
Thank
if
you.
a parent invests in education, half my career here in Canada, I invested in education. All my four daughters went to Branksome Hall School, which is an excellent school, and they contributed a lot to their success. Now all of them are settled professionally in the field of health. So education is the most important thing. As immigrants, we should take that opportunity. That's a message from me. And even our prophet, peace be upon him, always said that educate. More so, educate your daughters, because if you educate a man, you're educating just a person. If you're educating a daughter, you're educating a generation.
Wow, Julian loves that one. Educate the girl, educate the nation. Oh, that's definitely one. Anybody else could unmute yourself and share something with Dr. Dilkhush, please.
Farhan is sitting there, my
Farhan, chalo.
Haji.
Assalamualaikum, Uncle. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Shukran.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Uncle, for giving us the opportunity to see a different side of you. I mean, we have had a lot of conversations and a lot of personal meetings, and I mean, we got to know the person, but now we kind of see how the person came to fruition as well. So that was a pleasure seeing that. I mean, we heard a lot about your past, and we heard a lot about your present. My question is, tell us a little bit about your future.
My future.
That was my next question. So thank you, Farhan.
Farhan is a volunteer par excellence. During our Hajj, he helped each and every Haji in our group and outside the group as well, in everything. You had to just utter a sentence and Farhan would produce the things. So Farhan, we still have very fond memories of you and Siraj Bhai and all the other group members in our Haji group.
Of course.
So your question about the future. My answer to anybody who asks that question is, don't worry about what happened in the past. Don't worry about what's coming in the future. Live your life in the present. Live for the moment. This is the moment. This moment will become the past, and you will keep worrying that why didn't I enjoy and work during this moment. My personal plans for the future is to write a few books. I cannot give away the titles because then there might be plagiarism involved.
But this is an exclusive crowd. It's only being recorded and shared.
Okay. One of the books I'm planning to write is on my encounters with all the spiritual leaders and what is the common factor for all of them: hope, love, compassion, all those things, and quote them and compile a book not comparing, but bringing the commonality between all religions through the heads of these religions. My second book is a humorous one on I married a psychiatrist. I'm going to write as a person of my wife and what are the hurdles and obstacles and incidents she went through life by marrying a psychiatrist.
So you're gonna write a biography for Shanaz Auntie,
Well, it will be
an
in
anecdotal
film.
biography.
And there are a
You
few
will
other
definitely
ideas.
get on the midnight show.
Yeah.
For sure.
And also, I'm making this documentary film on the life and time of Jean Augustine. It's called Steadfast, The Message and the Messenger. Because of COVID and other issues, financial issues, we had paused the continuation of the post-production work. But I would like to see this movie completed in the future. The other thing about travel plans are all cancelled. I was supposed to be in England now today, but I had to cancel my plans because of COVID. My other plan is to again bring all the team together and go for Umrah or Hajj for the second time.
Inshallah.
First time, one is not fully experienced to see the subtle things in the pilgrimage. So I have some political ambitions too, not electoral politics, but through the government ceremonial positions. Well, I don't want to put the things now in the perspective because that is just a dream. It may or may not come true. So thank you. Have I answered your question, or you were expecting
Yes,
something?
you have. No, it's exactly what I was expecting to hear. Some of the directions and
I hope for the future that we conquer COVID. We will conquer COVID. Human beings are so adaptable and so resilient that we will find a vaccine, we will find a new and a better normal, and we will also find a new and a better world we live in. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Salam alaikum, shalom, shanti, and peace be each and every one of you. We've been very
That's
honored
my brother who has come online.
Headliner guest tonight, Dr. Dilkhush Panjwani.
That's Dilkhush Panjwani. I can see him sitting there.
Yes. And we have been very blessed to have Khalid Latif earlier. And of course, I want to thank Dr. Dil from Regina for joining us, Imam Abdul Wahab for staying with us, and the chaplain, Julian Martin, of course, for joining us and had to leave, and Farhan and everyone else. We usually get about 1,000 viewers on Facebook Live and YouTube. So we'll be sharing the link on Facebook as well as YouTube. Dr. Dilkhush Panjwani, you have the parting words with us before we leave. And again, good night, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Dilkhush Panjwani.
Just on a webinar.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah, yourself, family.
Well,
hello, Imam. How are you doing?
Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah, trying for better, listening good things. Alhamdulillah.
You look very relaxed and younger than when I last met you.
Somehow, yeah. I don't know who's look younger, but anyway, we'll see. But inshallah. But when brother, asked about the future, we plan for the future. Inna al-insanu yudabbiru wallahu yuqaddiru. We do make the plans, but Allah is deciding what's going to happen. Inshallah, to be just good and to see each other, to listen to each other, and inshallah soon to see each other together and having coffee together, bismillah.
Inshallah.
And I wish everybody happiness in the family and in the life. Even in this situation, we should be really thinking positive side.
Amen.
May Allah save all of us.
Boy, love.
Salam.
Go ahead. Your parting words, Dr. Dilkhush.
Sorry?
Your parting words.
Parting words.
Yes.
My parting words. Somebody asked our Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, what is the best Islam? And you know what the answer was? The best Islam is that you feed the hungry and spread peace among people you know and the people you do not know. So, since the Muslim Food Bank is the host of this program, this message is very relevant for all of us, that we support the humanitarian initiatives done by the Muslim Bank, Food Bank, not just once, but on an ongoing basis. Because the best Islam is that you feed the hungry, and they are doing that job.
Well, I'm very grateful and indebted to your parting message. And Farhan, you heard that, right? Good. So everybody, thank you again, Dr. Dilkhush, and your family and friends for joining us. Our weekly webinar is named Your Story, a Mercy to Humanity, and the name of our food bank is Table of Mercy. And we do that at the IMO Mosque every month. Almost 400 hampers we distribute and deliver. Our next delivery and distribution is on the 21st and 22nd of November. Again, Jazakallah khair, good evening, and thanks for joining us. Dr. Dilkhush, you're one sport, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum to all.
Wa alaikum salam rahmatullahi barakatuh.